Yay. All right, thank you so much for your participation in the group photo, if you participated, that is. Next up, we have Ellie. She came here all the way from the States to tell us about local to live deployments, and let's give her a huge hand of applause, have her feel welcome, and let's get started.
Hi there. Is this working okay? Cool. So everybody can actually hear me for once. Spiffy. Hi, I'm Ellie, obviously American, and I'm here to slightly. There we go. Talk about local to live deployment for a TYPO3 beginner like me. Currently working as a content creator with Open Strategy Partners, handy t-shirt, and in partnership with the DDEV team. So I think this is cutting out a little. It is. All right. So I am going to talk about how I manage my very small TYPO3 project, mostly for myself, but also with a couple collaborators. And I think this is the easiest way that I've found to do that. So I will get right into it. I should say there are lots of ways to do this. This is just what worked for me. Number 2. So the first question, I think, is why are we here? And as the DDEV team, we're here because this is our vision, right? And it's kind of simple on the one hand, but also a bit more complex how we're supporting developers everywhere. And there are a lot of intricate systems involved. But the basic idea is pretty simple, that we're part of the developer community, we're advancing other developers and their communities beyond where we are today, hopefully, and thinking that together we can paint a picture of what tomorrow can and should be, which hopefully involves a lot of collaboration and listening and learning and sharing knowledge and just together in a collaborative cross-community way. Today, obviously, we're talking about TYPO3 because here we are, but the DDEV team has a lot of roots in Drupal and in Kubernetes, so we're sort of overlapping with those communities a lot as well. And building connections between all of them. And actually, if you want to hear more about that, some of my colleagues are presenting on Sunday. That's Kevin and Jan will be talking more about Kubernetes, so head to that one as well. And then, per the keynote, there's a question of why am I here, which is a bit more personal, and that's, I'm still learning a lot, and I really liked what Benny had to say about, you know more than you think, which is true. Like, I look back on me a year ago, I didn't know what TYPO3 was, and here I am. So that's been quite an experience. I started out with TYPO3 because I've been working on a TYPO3 guidebook, and that's sort of an introduction to TYPO3 for a wide audience, and that's actually my next session. So stick around for that if you want to know more. But that also sort of ties into the DDEV vision of advancing developer communities and cross-community collaboration. I have also some history in Drupal, and I'm interested in helping TYPO3 reach a broader audience as well. So hopefully this book will help us reach out to a broader community in more countries and more types of users too. Everybody from editors to developers. Fourth. So one thing I've definitely noticed in my beginner experience is that it's a little challenging to get projects out with all this complexity that we have, just different pieces of websites and other kinds of projects, content management projects coming together can be a little complicated, and that can be difficult to manage. So we're hoping to create a more integrated approach in a way that will really support everyone involved. So that's the application developers, agency owners, business managers, forth. It is somewhat comforting knowing that I'm not the only one struggling with the complexity. It's a lot of it. So creating freedom for developers is also a key part of the DDEV mission, and we're looking a lot at open source and cloud native concepts and how modern applications can really manage the broad range of services that they're working with. And in the process, we're creating robust tools for developers and independent folks who are like working on their own as freelancers, as well as people in agencies who maybe need something that will help them collaborate with their teams. So having some options and flexibility in your tool set is pretty helpful. Sort of some example team members I came up with. So there's Julie on the front end. She might be a bit of an integrator. And we've got Dwayne, back-end developer, and Anne, who is the rock star. You know, she's the one everybody goes to for help. I'm working independently most of the time, but I have a couple of collaborators. So one of my coworkers is editing what I'm writing, and I need to sometimes just show her what I've been working on and give her an example that she can spin up locally. So DDEV is pretty handy for that. And then occasionally I'm working with outsiders from other places, like Benny, folks from this community who are very helpful in walking me through some simple tasks. That's another situation in which I just put my project up on my GitLab site, actually. Share with them. So Julie, the first member of our team, is a designer. She's got a lot of creative instincts and needs to work with the rest of her team by ingesting services to display to the end user, and would rather focus on doing that creative work than messing around with the local development environment. And I really feel that pain, because the first few times I tried doing any development, I think I spent more time messing with my local environment than anything else. We've also got Dwayne here, who's really enjoys building APIs that work with the server-side data and processing. He's got the laser focus on data structures and services, and you might need to create use interfaces, created by Julie to validate the service or user experience, being driven by business logic. And generally, he's more comfortable developing locally than working with servers. So he's the guy who's not interested in messing around with infrastructure or dealing with things breaking when he wants to deploy. So he's pretty interested in things just working. Then there's Anne, who has experience in a lot of different systems and is often a bit of a bottleneck as a result, because people come to her for advice or just assign her all the tasks as they go into planning mode and say, oh, well, Anne can do that too. And then there's this giant stack of things that she can't possibly accomplish, but also there's not enough time left in the day for training other people. So part of the idea in having a way to share projects more easily between each other and push to deployment easily is that there's more opportunity for someone like Anne to train other folks, help everyone grow and be a stronger team. So then we get to DDEV Local. So quick question, how many people have used DDEV Local? That's not too terribly many, but that's good. So DDEV Local is a tool that helps teams share their work and collaborate, especially, and it also allows us to leverage Docker without needing to know too much about Docker, and but also able to add complexity on top of that to add more customizations and configuration and whatever is needed. So there's a lot of sharing. You can share just by sharing your project with somebody and setting up your configuration, and that works across Windows and Linux and Mac. But we also just added a feature called DDEV Share, where you get a little URL you can actually share outside of your team a little more easily. And if you want to know a bunch more, we have a session Saturday morning from Andrew, who will be talking tips and tricks for DDEV Local. So I'm just giving the broad overview here, hopefully. So now I'm going to get into demo mode. Pre-recorded because we've learned that lesson. Start with, we will install DDEV Local, and video assumes that you've already installed Docker. So we're going to start from installing Homebrew and then adding DDEV to Homebrew, installing DDEV itself, initializing mkcert, then verifying the installation. Works, yay. fancy little video here. It just runs through the basic commands. On Mac, since I am on Mac, but we do have Linux Brew and Chocolatey. That's the correct pronunciation. This on any of those machines. So first we install Homebrew. Very exciting. Also, of course, allows you to easily update DDEV without having to go through too much stuff. Recommend donating back to other open source projects as well. So that's something I'll get to a little bit later. Add DDEV to Homebrew. Also, an edge channel for DDEV now if you want like the most recent. There's a test version out right now. A full release in the next couple days. Old hat for a lot of you. Just recommends doing the mkcert install, so we'll run through that. Able to access projects from HTTPS, which is lovely. Okay, so next step, and this is obviously the initial setup, but you get the idea for how simple it is to get going just with any TYPO3 project. And I'm going to run from the quick start guide to show how to set up from like 0 to your basic TYPO3 site, but you'd often be using an existing site, project on GitHub, whatnot. I'm going to use the quick start guide to go through this, and video, a bunch of video. So first step, make your directory. I think this is also pretty much the instructions that are on TYPO3 documentation. And you just do a little bit of configuration to create sort of the, this is, you have no idea how many takes I had to do to type that correctly. It's a problem. Right. Configure as a basic PHP project, and then do the create. We sped this up a little bit. Just in case anybody doesn't know, I think Composer is the recommended method for installing TYPO3 at this point. Just better for management and general tidiness going forward. Yeah, the internet does not actually go that fast. Wish. And then we just configure again to make it a TYPO3 project, so everything's. And DDEV restart. Brings us to the handy URL to view your site locally. Just bring that over to the browser. That is one little tiny thing that's in the instructions. To do the installation, you need HTTP no S. Happily runs, and we wind up with our site. I think I had one other tiny snafu here. Anywho, you get the idea. TYPO3 backend here. Okay. So that's local, right? Pretty straightforward, not too many commands. I've been able to introduce new folks to that without too much pain on their end, or mine for that matter. Anyway, so next step in your workflow, hopefully, will be pushing to GitHub. This is obviously super useful for when you've got a whole team to keep in sync. Probably everybody is familiar with version control, yes? Yeah, so I did not do a video for this section because I figured that. But the basic overview, because this is a key part of the process, especially when we're using Dev Live to deploy, which I'll get to in a sec. So there's, add GitHub as a remote, push your repository. Which brings us to DDEV Live. So this is new. Haven't actually shown it in public before. But I'm using it as part of my workflow just as a trial user, which is very exciting. Cool to have that. So in order to use DDEV Live, what we're doing is there's a GitHub login, and then installing a GitHub app, downloading the CLI tool. I did find the help is super useful in this. I was also grateful for. And then just adding a site from your GitHub account. So you do need an existing site as a trial user. Pushing your assets, and you're good to go. So I'm going to start from installing DDEV Live. This one I didn't try to type manually. Right, so I've downloaded the CLI tool, moved it into the proper location, made sure it was executable, and then this is the auth command to actually connect to the DDEV Live platform, which was successful, yay. Then I'm just creating the TYPO3 site from an existing site. Yes. Pretty exciting moment for all of us. First time we did it. Then I can just visit the site on my URL. We'll ignore the errors, as I often do. That button is more confident than I am. As you would expect. Voila. TYPO3 running on DDEV Live. So there you have it. That's pipeline for getting to deployed. Ooh. Cool. So that's the general idea. This is a pretty short version of the process, I would say, but just to review, we installed DDEV local, got a new project, pushed it to GitHub, connected actually to GitHub to get that into DDEV Live, and a live website. Too terribly long, which is also helpful when I'm working with team members. And So that's just a review of some features that we went already. Got a few resources to follow up with here if you are interested in more information. Handy newsletter, there's a Twitter account. My favorite thing here is actually the awesome DDEV. That's a collection of blog posts and resources from folks in various communities. So there's some stuff from Drupal people in there, some stuff from TYPO3 people. It's pretty neat. It is also something that you can edit and contribute to. So that's pretty cool. If you ever have questions or anything, there's handy Slack channel, Stack Overflow, and of course the official documentation. That's about it. The ongoing conversation, you can find any of the DDEV team members here. I think they're all wearing little DDEV stickers on their badges, I think. So you can find them, and we've got another session tomorrow morning with Andrew and a session on Sunday with Kevin. But part of our program going forward is what you see here. When we have trial users and other folks dropping by, and especially if you can give us feedback, we're going to be donating some percentages to open source projects. We've sort of also come up with a list of those projects that we'd like to contribute back to. So those will be available to choose from. That's it. That went faster than I expected. Questions? Benji.
Thank you. Looked really awesome. The easy way to deployment. I think it's somehow about GitHub hubs or hooks or whatever. The demo you showed on the local installation, a composer-based installation on 9.5.8, while the production version was running on a classic installation with 9.0. So was it on purpose that there is a difference in there, or?
I just had different projects when I was doing the recordings.
Okay. Is there any possibility to get into the deployment process from local to live, like additional hooks, additional scripts that need to be executed, that
right
kind
now,
of stuff?
So for the moment, right, we're working locally, pushing to GitHub, and then connecting to GitHub to get the project to live.
There's nothing additional that's necessary outside of connecting that GitHub connector. The trial version that you just saw is our first implementation. And we've made it as simple as possible, so there is no additional steps. The Composer install will work on DDEV Live as well as DDEV Local, and it does work with TYPO3 version 10 already. So it's
My question was more, okay, I need to do additional steps on deployment, like TYPO3 console to run database migration, whatever. We got the same kind of stuff, I guess, for Drupal with all the Drush stuff going on. So that was a question. If I'm able to get into the process and can run my own additional scripts.
Mm-hmm. There's a hook system very similar to as if you were using DDEV Local. There's some slight modifications to it, but we do support that completely.
That's really neat. So now all we need is a pricing, right?
Would you like to sit up here?
We do have pricing in place, and if you talk to any of the people with the DDEV stickers a little bit later, we'll connect that for you.
Well, that turned into a nice little panel situation here. All right, are there any more questions? No? Nobody? Be brave. Okay.
Well, I have one final note. I just wanted to thank, obviously, the DDEV team for building this awesome tool, and especially for getting TYPO3 support in so early in the process. It's wonderful, obviously, for the TYPO3 community, and moi. So thank you, DDEV team.
All right. Feels like a little bit of feedback. Oh, that was your applause. Great. All right. we'll see you again in a half an hour-ish for another talk. Until then, have some water, have a coffee. See you back here.